The smell of Mark's cologne was still on my skin when I walked into the apartment I shared with Josh. Josh, who had dinner waiting. Josh, who had spent the last 6 months in therapy just to try and be the man he thought I needed. I looked at his kind, trusting face and realized that in a single, sweat-drenched hour in a hotel room, I hadn't just cheated. I had set my entire future on fire. And the worst part? For the first time in years, I finally felt alive. Welcome back. This is the video I promised myself I'd never make. Most people come on here to show you the highlight reel of their lives, the perfect trips, the staged smiles. But this channel is for the stuff we usually keep behind closed doors. Today, I'm talking about the choice that blew up my life, the person I hurt, and the dirty truth about why I did it. If you're here for a hero story, you're in the wrong place. But if you're here for the truth, let's get into it. I remember the way Josh looked at me that final morning. He was standing in our sun-drenched kitchen, wearing that soft gray sweater I bought him, carefully pouring my coffee exactly the way I like it. He was the man every woman is told to pray for. Josh didn't just love me, he cherished me. He remembered my sister's birthday, he handled the bills, and when I had a bad day at work, he would listen for hours without interrupting. He was my best friend, my rock, and my forever. But there was a ghost in our bedroom. It had been 6 months since we'd even tried. Josh's erectile dysfunction wasn't just a medical hurdle, it was a wall of shame that sat between us every night. I did everything right. I was patient. I told him it didn't matter. I went to the couples therapy sessions where we talked about non-traditional intimacy and building an emotional foundation. But as I sat across from him that morning, sipping the coffee he'd made with so much love, all I could feel was a crushing, hollow ache. I was 28 years old, and I felt like I was living in a beautiful library where I wasn't allowed to touch the books. "You okay?" he asked, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. His touch was warm, safe, and completely devoid of electricity. "Just tired," I lied. "The Chicago trip is going to be a lot of meetings. I think I'm just stressed." He smiled, that sincere, heartbreakingly kind smile. "You're going to crush it. I'll have a bottle of wine and dinner waiting when you get back on Friday." I felt a physical pang of guilt in my chest. I didn't know then that by Friday, the woman he was looking at would be gone. I didn't know that in 48 hours, I would be standing in a dimly lit hotel bar in Chicago, smelling a scent I hadn't smelled in 5 years, sandalwood, leather, and trouble. I didn't know I was about to meet Mark. The hotel bar in Chicago was everything our apartment wasn't: dark, loud, and smelling of expensive bourbon and bad decisions. I sat there in my power suit, nursing a gin and tonic, trying to focus on the presentation notes for the morning, but my mind kept drifting back to the safety of Josh. I felt like a fraud. I was the woman who had the perfect man, yet I was sitting in a city 1,000 miles away, feeling a desperate, ugly hunger for something more than a supportive conversation. Then, the air in the room changed. You know that feeling when you know someone is looking at you before you even see them? It's a prickle on the back of your neck. I looked up, and my heart didn't just skip a beat. It hit a wall. Mark was standing by the mahogany pillar, 3 feet away. He hadn't changed. Same messy dark hair, same jawline that looked like it was carved from granite, and that same look in his eyes, the one that told you he knew exactly what you were thinking, and he didn't care if it was wrong. Mark wasn't a safe man. He was the man who had broken my heart at 23 because he lived for the moment and never for the future. "Small world," he said. His voice was a low growl that vibrated right through my chest. "Mark," I managed to say, my grip tightening on my glass. "What are you doing here?" "Business." "Same as you, I assume." He moved closer, sliding onto the stool next to me without asking. He didn't ask for permission. Josh always asked for permission. "You look different. Polished. Like you're playing a part." "I'm not playing a part. I'm happy, Mark. I'm in a real relationship. A stable one." I said the words like a shield, but they felt flimsy. "Stable," he repeated, a smirk playing on his lips. He leaned in, and I caught it, the sandalwood and leather. It hit me like a physical blow. "Is that what you call it when you're starving to death?" "I can see it in your eyes, Lena. You're bored. You're suffocating under the weight of all that stability." "You don't know anything about my life," I hissed, but I didn't move away. He reached out, his thumb grazing the back of my hand. It wasn't the polite, tentative squeeze Josh gave me. It was electric. It was a demand. My skin felt like it was on fire. For 2 years, I had convinced myself that I didn't need this raw, animal magnetism. I told myself I was above it. I was a liar. "I know you," Mark whispered, leaning so close his breath warmed my ear. "And I know that man you're with isn't giving you what you need." "Not really. Otherwise, you wouldn't still be sitting here." He stood up, leaving a room key on the bar. He didn't say a word. He just walked toward the elevators. I looked at the key. I thought of Josh, probably at home, checking the calendar to make sure he remembered my flight time. I thought of our therapy sessions. And then I thought of the cold, silent nights in our bed. I picked up the key. I know, it's messy. And it's about to get a lot more intense. If you've ever felt like you were choosing between your heart and your sanity, hit that like button so I know I'm not alone. I'm about to share the exact moment my life shattered, so make sure you're subscribed with notifications on. You don't want to miss how this ends. But before we get to the confession, honestly, drop a truth in the comments if you think I should have just walked away instead of going to that room. Okay, let's get back to the night that changed everything. The walk to the elevator felt like a slow-motion descent into hell or heaven. I couldn't decide which. Every floor the elevator climbed, my heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. Turn around, a voice screamed in my head. Think of the gray sweater. Think of the coffee. Think of the 5-year plan, but my hand was already swiping the plastic card. The light flickered green. The door hadn't even fully clicked shut behind me before Mark was there. He didn't say, hello. He didn't ask how my day was. He just grabbed me, his hands firm and certain on my waist, and pinned me against the door. I knew you'd come, he murmured against my throat. When he kissed me, it wasn't the gentle, tentative exploration I had grown used to with Josh. It was a collision. It was everything I had been starving for, a raw, undeniable hunger that didn't need non-traditional intimacy or therapy talk. It was just biology. It was fire. For the next hour, the world outside that room ceased to exist. There was no Josh, no ED, no guilt, no safe future. There was only the weight of Mark's body, the intensity of his touch, and the terrifying realization that I had been settling for a flicker when I needed a forest fire. With Mark, everything was easy. There was no pressure to be patient or understanding. My body remembered him in a way my mind had tried to forget. In the dark of that hotel room, I wasn't a caregiver or a supportive partner. I was just a woman being wanted, but as the adrenaline began to ebb, the silence of the room started to feel heavy. Mark was asleep, his arm draped possessively over me, looking exactly like the man who had ruined my life once before. I checked my phone. One new message. Josh, just saw the weather in Chicago. Looks like it's raining. Hope you're tucked in bed and getting some rest. I love you, Lena. Can't wait to have you home. The words felt like physical blows. I looked at the man beside me, the man who represented my past and my worst impulses, and then at the glowing screen representing my perfect future. I had gotten exactly what I wanted. I was no longer starving. But as I lay there in the dark, smelling the sandalwood and leather on my skin, I realized the dirty truth. You can't go back to a library once you've burned it down. I wasn't just a cheater. I was a stranger to the life I had built. The flight back to Houston was a blur of gray clouds and nausea. I spent the entire 2 hours in a bathroom stall, scrubbing my neck and shoulders with cold water, trying to wash away the scent of sandalwood and the memory of Mark's hands. But you can't wash away a choice. When I walked through our front door, the apartment smelled like roasted garlic and rosemary. Josh was in the kitchen, just like he said he'd be. He'd even bought the expensive Cabernet I liked. He looked up, his face lighting up with a warmth that felt like a physical burn on my skin. Hey, traveler, he said, moving toward me for a hug. I flinched. Just a tiny, microscopic movement, but to a man who had spent years analyzing every subtle shift in my body language to see if he was failing me, it was a gunshot. He stopped mid-stride. The smile didn't disappear, but it froze. Lena, you okay? Was the trip that bad? Josh, we need to talk, I said. My voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. Someone cold. Okay. He sat down at the small dining table he'd set so carefully. Is this about the therapy? Because I called Dr. Eris, and he thinks we should try a new approach. I slept with Mark. The silence that followed wasn't just quiet, it was a vacuum. It sucked the air right out of the room. I watched the color drain from Josh's face, leaving him a ghostly, sickly pale. He didn't yell. He didn't throw anything. He just sat there, looking at the 2 wine glasses he'd polished. Mark, he whispered. Your ex? The one you told me was a mistake. I ran into him. It happened. It happened. Josh's voice finally cracked, rising into a sharp, jagged edge. I have spent 2 years of my life feeling like half a man for you. I have gone to doctors. I have bared my soul in therapy. I have stayed awake at night crying because I couldn't give you what you deserved, and I thought we were fighting for this together. We were, I sobbed, the guilt finally breaking through. But Josh, I was starving. I didn't want a project. I didn't want a non-traditional solution. I wanted to feel wanted. And for one night, I didn't have to be patient. I didn't have to be the understanding girlfriend. I just got to be a woman. Josh stood up, his chair screeching against the hardwood. So that's the dirty truth? My effort wasn't enough? My love wasn't enough because of a medical condition I can't control. It's not just the condition, Josh. It's the way we lived around it. It became our entire world. No, Josh said, his voice turning cold and hard, a version of him I'd never seen. It became your world. I was trying to build a life. You were just waiting for an exit. He walked to the bedroom, and for a second, I thought he was going to pack. Instead, he came back with his car keys. I can't do this, Lena. I can't look at you and wonder if every time I touch your hand, you're comparing me to him. I was willing to work through my brokenness. I'm not willing to work through yours. He left. The click of the door was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. I sat at that perfectly set table, surrounded by the smell of the dinner he'd cooked for me, and poured myself a glass of that expensive wine. I had chosen my past. I had blown up my future. And as I sat there in the silence of the apartment we were supposed to grow old in, I realized that honesty doesn't always set you free. Sometimes, it just leaves you alone in the wreckage of the person you used to be. Josh never came back that night. Or the night after. Looking back, I realize I spent 2 years trying to be the perfect partner for a perfect man while ignoring the fact that I was dying inside. I thought I was being noble by staying. I thought I was being a saint by being patient. But the dirty truth? Resentment is a slow-acting poison. I chose my ex over my future because, for one night, I wanted to feel powerful instead of patient. I wanted to feel desired instead of understanding. I destroyed a good man's trust to satisfy a hunger I should have been honest about months, maybe years ago. I'm in therapy now. Alone. And the hardest thing I've had to learn isn't how to forgive myself for cheating. It's learning that you can love someone with your whole heart and still not be compatible with them. Josh deserved a woman who could wait forever. And I deserved a life where I didn't feel like I was starving. My mistake wasn't just the hotel room. It was the lie I told myself every morning that good on paper was enough to keep me whole. Beat. She looks directly into the lens, so I'm curious. If you were in my shoes, if you had a partner who was perfect in every way except for the one thing you needed, how long would you wait? Or would you have burned it all down, too? Let's talk in the comments. I'm ready for the heat. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for listening to the parts of the story nobody wants to tell. I'll see you in the next one.